Well, well, look who's got the whole community rattled. The streets that used to buzz with gossip suddenly went quiet, like everybody's holding their breath at the same time. The ones who act tough, the ones who brag about being outside, the ones who swear they fear nothing. They're whispering now, whispering your name like it carries voltage, whispering your movements like you're a natural disaster they don't know how to predict. They're gathered in corners, doorways, dim-lit living rooms, trying to figure out how the hell everything flipped this fast. They can feel it, can't they? That pressure that rolled in the moment you stopped absorbing hits and started reflecting them. That shift in the air when the person they thought was easy to target became the reason their best hitters hesitated. There's something in you that makes grown men sweat, something that makes cowards reconsider their loyalty, something that makes their little backdoor deals collapse before they even begin. They spent months setting you up, and then you walked into the room like the assignment never existed. Here's what's really messing with their heads. You didn't retaliate. You didn't gather a crew. You didn't call in favors or flex connections. You didn't need weapons, threats, or theatrics. You just kept existing, quiet, focused, untouched, and somehow that alone broke their chain of command. They're convinced you got something backing you, something forbidden, something they can't name, something that doesn't show up on surveillance footage, but shows up in their dreams. That's why they keep watching you like they're waiting for an omen. 3 days ago, they held their own version of an emergency meeting. Not the fake tough guys who puff their chest online. The real ones, the shot callers, the ones who don't move unless the air goes heavy, the ones who don't speak unless a threat is real. 13 of them, sitting in a back room, curtains drawn, eyes low, hands shaking around old liquor like the bottle could steady their fear. And the topic of discussion? You. Your name sliding across the table like a loaded weapon. They've been tracking you. You felt it, haven't you? That disturbance in the field, that shift in the atmosphere, that quiet pressure crawling across your skin when somebody's energy is pointed your way. They've been watching you, not physically. They're smarter than that. But socially, spiritually, strategically. Watching the way people fold when you walk past. Watching the way bad luck hits anyone who stands too close to your enemies. Watching the way protection seems to blanket you without you lifting a single finger. One of the elders in that room finally said what they were all terrified to voice. This isn't normal pressure. This is something else, something that shouldn't exist in this neighborhood. And he wasn't talking about violence. He wasn't talking about retaliation. He wasn't talking about anything physical. He meant your presence, your aura, the way this entire community bent around you, like you were altering the air itself. They tried to read you, to figure out what makes you untouchable. They tried tapping into connections. They tried watching your patterns. They tried sending someone to test your boundaries. But nothing worked. Every time they got close to understanding you, something collapsed. A plan fell apart. A secret leaked. A hitter backed out. A lie surfaced. A witness snitched. It was like the ground itself flipped under their feet. One younger one tried to get information on you through a friend of a friend, and he had a panic attack mid-conversation. Chest tight, breath short, like he touched the wrong frequency, trying to decode your energy. He's still recovering. So they went to the street archives, the real ones, not the stories people post online for clout, but the ones passed down by men who didn't live long enough to warn anyone twice. And buried deep in whispered warnings, they found something that made their blood run cold. Some people aren't meant to be touched. Some people aren't built. They're forged, Some people aren't protected. They are the protection. Some people don't survive pressure. They turn it into artillery. These old stories talked about people who carry a different kind of weight. People whose names are never spoken unless necessary. People who don't start wars. They end them by walking into the room. People whose trauma didn't break them. It crystallized into something lethal, something precise, something the streets were never built to handle. And the most terrifying part? The stories said these people don't even know what they are at first. They think they're just tired, just misunderstood, just minding their own business while life keeps hitting them. They have no idea they're reshaping the field just by breathing. Until one day, the streets go quiet. Until one day, the hitters hesitate. Until one day, the liars start snitching. Until one day, the community starts acting like they saw something they shouldn't have. And that day is today. It arrived through absence. Conversations died mid-sentence. Eyes lowered for no reason. Doors shut quicker. People looked away when you walked by, not because they didn't want to be seen with you, but because they didn't want to be seen studying you. Fear changes behavior long before it changes language, and right now, everybody's behavior is exposing exactly what they've been hiding. The community isn't confused, they're shaken. They're starting to realize they weren't dealing with someone normal. They weren't dealing with someone predictable. They weren't dealing with someone who plays emotional games or engages in petty drama. They were dealing with someone whose energy rearranges outcomes, whose presence flips strategies, whose spirit makes liars choke on their own intentions. That's why their bravado evaporated. That's why the gossip pipeline froze. Nobody wants to be the next name that karma drags into the spotlight. They're replaying every encounter they've had with you, every moment they judged you, every rumor they entertained, every time they stayed quiet when someone threw dirt on your name, every time they laughed at an insult that was really a confession, every time they wished for your downfall like that wish wouldn't bounce back. You becoming the center of the Whisper network changed everything. You turned into the reality check they didn't ask for, but desperately needed. The same people who once underestimated you are dealing with a truth they can't outrun. Nothing about you was ever small. Your pain wasn't small. Your lessons weren't small. Your healing wasn't small. Your intuition wasn't small. And your consequences definitely weren't small. Some of them are dealing with those consequences right now. They don't know how to function under this pressure. Some can't sleep. Some can't eat. Some wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, convinced something is watching them. Some are having dreams so vivid, they wake up checking their surroundings. Some are experiencing that eerie sensation of being exposed even when nobody is asking them questions. That's what guilt does. It becomes its own surveillance. And they're snitching because guilt always wants an exit. One of them broke down to a cousin. Another broke down to an ex. Someone else broke down to a friend who immediately repeated it to someone else. Secrets are spilling out faster than they can plug the holes, and every confession adds more weight to the collective panic surrounding your name. They're realizing that the real danger was never your retaliation. It was their accountability. The funniest part? They're confused by the way life keeps protecting you. Every setback they planned turned into a setup for their exposure. Every trap they built collapsed onto them. Every rumor they spread came back around with their fingerprints visible. They don't understand how you're still standing, still focused, still elevating. They don't understand how you keep moving like you've already seen the ending and you're not worried about the middle. It makes them feel powerless because people who rely on external influence can't comprehend someone who relies on internal alignment. Somebody in that meeting mentioned that exact point. They said, "This one don't move like the rest of us." Another said, "It's like they know things they shouldn't know." Another whispered, "Maybe we touched the wrong one." And then the room fell dead quiet because everybody felt the weight of that last line. They didn't just pick the wrong target. They picked the one person who was built to expose them without lifting a finger. They chose someone whose spirit moves like a mirror, reflecting every intention back to the sender. They chose someone who doesn't have to avenge themselves because energy does it for them. They chose someone whose protection isn't loud, but absolute. Now the streets are circulating a new kind of rumor, one wrapped in fear, not mockery. They're calling you the one who doesn't fold, the one who doesn't break, the one who walks through pressure like pressure was the training ground that raised them. People are starting to realize something they never expected. You're not just surviving what happened. You're walking through it like the architect of consequence. Someone who betrayed you is carrying that realization harder than the rest. They thought aligning with your enemies would secure their position. They thought choosing the crowd over their conscience would protect them. But now they're watching the same crowd crumble, and they're dealing with a level of regret that feels like a spiritual chokehold. They know the streets aren't quiet because they're safe. The streets are quiet because their comfort is over. More information is coming out behind closed doors. People are confessing things they promised they'd take to the grave. Someone who played innocent is being named as the ringleader. Someone who pretended to be neutral is being exposed as the informant. Someone who swore they were loyal is being dragged out as the saboteur. And none of this required your involvement. Your name alone is doing the sorting. That's how you know your spirit is operating at a level they're not built for. You walk into a room and everybody's mask tightens. You walk into a space and people sit up straighter. You walk down a street and the atmosphere shifts, like the air itself respects your presence. You didn't ask for this power. You earned it through seasons of suffering that molded you into something they can't imitate. Now their fear is turning into superstition. They're giving you abilities you never claimed. They're creating theories to explain your resilience. They're telling each other you're protected by something, even if they don't know what that something is. They're whispering that messing with you comes with consequences they can't calculate. And the deeper this fear spreads, the more people distance themselves from the ones who plotted against you. Snitching increases when loyalty decreases, and loyalty decreases when consequences appear. Someone is about to fold publicly. Someone is about to crack under pressure and name names without being pushed. Someone is about to expose the whole operation because they don't want the spiritual blowback alone. They're terrified of what comes next, not because of you, but because they know the truth is no longer containable. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make threats. You didn't chase anything. You just remained aligned. And alignment is the most dangerous weapon you possess. And that's exactly where the real unraveling begins. Because once fear becomes a rumor, rumor becomes a pattern, and a pattern becomes a prophecy. People start acting differently around you, quieter, more cautious, more observant. You can see it in the way they look at you, not with curiosity, but with caution, like you're holding a switch they can't afford for you to flip. They step lightly, speak slowly and move like the walls are listening. They don't realize it yet, but they're the ones who created this version of you in their minds. They projected danger onto your name until your name started carrying the frequency of danger. They convinced themselves you were untouchable until the universe started treating you like you were. And now, the same people who swore they didn't believe in energy are praying it doesn't come for them first. The streets know something is off, and people can feel it in the air. The hush isn't just quiet, it's heavy. Heavy like a secret that wants to break out. Heavy like pressure that's looking for a crack. Heavy like something spiritual is happening and nobody wants to say it out loud. They feel eyes on them even when nobody's watching. They feel guilt tugging at their conscience, like a loose thread they can't stop pulling. They feel the consequences circling them, closing in like a cold draft in a locked room. That's why they keep whispering. That's why they keep snitching. That's why they keep pointing fingers and naming names and shifting blame. Everyone is trying to outrun accountability, but accountability runs faster than fear ever could. One of the hitters they hired, one of the main ones, the one who swore he'd never fold, he's the one cracking first. He hasn't slept properly in days. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees flashes of what he attempted to do to you. Not the physical part, the energetic part. He feels chased, haunted, cornered by the weight of the assignment he accepted. He says every time he tries to calm down, it feels like something grabs his attention from the inside. Not paranoia, not anxiety, something deeper, something he can't describe, something that makes him feel watched from the other side of his own thoughts. And that's exactly why he's talking. He told someone he'd rather deal with the law than deal with whatever spiritual consequences he feels stalking him. That right there was the trigger for the chain reaction. Because when the main hitter folds, the rest of the operation collapses. People who were confident start panicking. People who were silent start whispering. People who swore they'd never speak start calling numbers they shouldn't be calling. Someone who used to talk loud now can't look anyone in the eye. Someone who tried to seem fearless now flinches at shadows. Someone who swore they would ride for the team is suddenly not trying to go down for nobody. It's a domino effect. One confession leads to another, and the whole network of lies begins to crumble. Meanwhile, you're not even aware of half the details. You're just living your life, staying in your lane, minding your purpose, and somehow your stillness is causing a storm in households that haven't even spoken to you in years. People are pacing rooms, replaying decisions, checking messages, deleting evidence, burning bridges they once relied on. They're scared of each other now. They're scared of being the last one to speak. They're scared of being the only one held accountable. And most of all, they're scared of being wrong about you, because being wrong about you means being vulnerable to whatever force they think is guarding you. There's someone in that community, an elder, a respected face, who knows exactly what kind of energy you carry. They've seen this before, not often, not recently, but enough to recognize it. They warned the others quietly, told them they were touching someone they should have left alone, told them this wasn't going to end the way they thought. But nobody listened because arrogance blinds fools faster than any curse ever could. Now that elder is sitting back, watching consequences unfold like a prophecy they didn't want to revisit. They're not smiling. They're not praising you. They're not taking sides. They're acknowledging a pattern that existed long before you were born. Some people are off limits, and every community has at least one. You're that one. Someone else, someone younger, is watching you too, but for a different reason. They didn't participate in anything, but they overheard conversations. They saw movements. They noticed patterns. And now they're realizing they were witnessing something bigger than petty street drama. They're realizing your presence carries a weight, their instincts respect. They look at you with a caution, laced with admiration, like they're witnessing someone who survived what others couldn't. They're noticing how you don't flinch under pressure, how you don't react to provocation, how you don't feed into rumors or threats. They're watching you walk through chaos with calmness, and it's changing them. They don't know it yet, but they're learning from you. They're learning how to navigate energy without letting fear dictate their choices. But the ones who plotted, they're learning a very different lesson. They're learning what happens when someone tries to collapse a destiny they weren't authorized to touch. They're learning what happens when you send hitters after someone the universe is protecting. They're learning what happens when you lie on someone who's spiritually aligned. They're learning what happens when you try to bury someone who grows roots under pressure. They're learning what happens when you attempt to destroy someone who doesn't crack. They transform. The more they learn, the more they break. Someone can't even look in the mirror anymore. They see guilt staring back at them, and guilt isn't merciful. Someone else is jumping at every small noise like their nerves have been rewired. Someone else is avoiding everyone, isolating themselves because they think isolation will save them from exposure. But isolation only gives guilt more room to breathe. Another one is acting overly friendly, overly helpful, overly nice because they want to hide their involvement. Desperation makes people transparent. And the streets, they're watching all of it. People are paying attention to who's acting strange, who's avoiding eye contact, who's suddenly silent, who's keeping to themselves, who's asking too many questions, who's drinking too much, who's paranoid, who's losing weight, who's losing sleep, who's losing their grip. The community knows even when they pretend they don't. People know energy shifts before stories surface. And right now, the energy is screaming louder than any confession. Someone's about to spill everything, not because they're noble, not because they regret it, but because they're terrified. They know consequences are circling like wolves closing in. They know the spiritual backlash doesn't care about excuses. They know the pressure is about to peak. And when pressure peaks, truth spills. That's why they're preparing to fold. That's why they're calculating their exit. That's why they're choosing betrayal over loyalty. Because loyalty was never real. It was just convenient. And here's the part they didn't expect. The snitching isn't only happening inside the circle. People on the outside are talking too. Neighbors, acquaintances, bystanders, people who overheard something they weren't supposed to, people who saw someone sneaking around your house or car or job, people who caught pieces of conversations that didn't add up, people who stayed quiet until pressure made them remember details. They're coming forward indirectly, telling the wrong person at the right time. Gossip is a dangerous weapon when it lands in the hands of someone who actually cares about the truth. Meanwhile, your silence remains your strongest move. Your composure remains your armor. Your intuition remains your guide. You're moving like someone who doesn't need proof because the universe already confirmed the truth. You're moving like someone who understands that everything hidden eventually surfaces. You're moving like someone who knows protection isn't something you ask for. It's something you carry. That's what keeps them up at night. Not your words, not your actions, your existence. They don't understand how their entire operation is collapsing when you haven't lifted a finger. They're calling it supernatural. They're calling it cosmic backlash. They're calling it karma on steroids. They're calling it that thing around you. They don't know what to label it, but the label doesn't matter. What matters is the results, and the results are chasing them. Someone is already planning to leave the city because they can't handle the pressure. Someone else is deleting messages and clearing their social media because guilt is strangling their judgment. Another one is distancing themselves from the original mastermind because they don't want to be collateral damage. The mastermind? They're cracking silently. They're trying to maintain their ego while the walls close in. Their confidence is shaking. Their perception is shifting. Their pride is bleeding. They thought they were in control. They thought they had leverage. They thought they could predict every outcome. But they never predicted you surviving. They never predicted you rising. They never predicted the community turning on them. They never predicted their own people snitching. This pressure is turning them inside out. This fear is peeling them layer by layer. This truth is dismantling their illusions. Everything they built against you is folding like flimsy paper under a storm they created. And the most ironic part? They're scared of you without you doing anything. They're scared of retribution you never planned. They're scared of consequences you never threatened. They're scared of accountability you never requested. Because guilt creates its own monsters. And when guilt grows teeth, it bites hardest at the person who fed it. Your name is the weight on their conscience, the echo in their regrets, the shadow in their paranoia. You're not haunting them. They're haunting themselves with what they did to you. And the streets? They've chosen their side without saying a word. The silence is proof. The whispers are confirmation. The panic is the confession. Because when the streets go quiet, it's never peace. It's pressure. It's evidence being rearranged. It's guilt shifting from one person to another like a fever. It's tension tightening the neighborhood like a belt. People stop lingering outside. People stop socializing. People stop laughing loud. Everyone's energy gets sharp, watchful, suspicious. That's the kind of quiet that makes even the guilty breathe differently. And that's exactly the kind of quiet surrounding your name. But the most brutal part? They know exactly why. Somebody out there, one of the ones who played the biggest role in the mess, is cracking. Not slowly, not quietly. They're unraveling fast, like threads being yanked out of a sweater by invisible hands. They're pacing rooms. They're losing weight. They're apologizing to people who didn't even ask for apologies. They're talking too much. They're contradicting themselves. Their story changed 3 times in 2 days. They can't hold the lies together because guilt is warping their focus. And every time someone asks them a simple question, their eyes dart, their throat tightens, and they answer with a delay that exposes everything they tried to hide. The pressure is turning their memory into liquid, and liquid truths spill everywhere. There's another one, someone who pretended to be tough, someone who used to walk around like nothing shook them. That person is losing their mind in silence. They're not talking, they're not snitching yet, but they're breaking inside. Their hands tremble when they roll up. Their jaw locks when someone mentions your name. Their sleep keeps getting interrupted by nightmares so vivid they wake up gasping for air. They feel something crawling behind them every time they walk alone. That's the weight of intention turning into karma. That's what it feels like when someone tries to wound a person spiritually covered. Someone else has stopped showing their face altogether. They're hiding in their own home, curtains closed, lights dimmed. They're avoiding phone calls, avoiding mirrors, avoiding responsibility, avoiding everyone who might ask the wrong question at the wrong time. Why? Because they know the community is shifting its attention. No one trusts anyone anymore. No one feels safe around the original crew. No one wants to be collateral damage. And the person everyone avoids the most, the mastermind. Not because the mastermind is powerful, but because the mastermind is collapsing, and collapsing people are dangerous to stand next to. They talk too much. They panic too fast. They get sloppy. They confess without realizing they're confessing. They start dropping hints, blaming others, projecting guilt, accusing the wrong people of betrayal. And they don't realize every attempt to deflect is actually exposing more. Your name has become the match. Their guilt became the gasoline. Their fear lit the fire. Someone who wasn't even supposed to be involved is now caught in the crossfire. A friend of a friend, a neighbor. Someone who overheard something they weren't meant to hear. They're watching everything crumble from the sidelines, and they're terrified because they know if the truth comes out fully, they might get dragged into the story. That fear is forcing them to talk. That fear is forcing them to distance themselves from the guilty. That fear is forcing them to choose a side, and they're choosing the only side that won't burn them. Your side, and you haven't even asked for it. That's the power of spiritual alignment. It speaks louder than intimidation. The ones who tried to come for you are now getting spiritually profiled by their own neighborhood. Every move they make gets examined. Every whisper they share gets dissected. Every person they meet gets questioned. The energy around them is dirty, and everyone can smell it. They're carrying the weight of their actions like a scent they can't wash off. But the real panic is coming from the hitters, because hitters operate on instinct. Hitters know energy before they know evidence. Hitters feel danger before danger has a face. And those hitters, they feel something coming for them. One is telling people his chest feels heavy when he thinks about the situation. Another keeps saying he feels targeted by something unseen. Another swears he keeps hearing footsteps when he's alone. Another keeps waking up at the same hour every night, sweating, shaking, heart pounding. They all think it's paranoia, but it's not paranoia. It's spiritual backlash. They touched something protected, and protected energy hits back harder than fists ever could. Now they're trying to figure out who the weakest link is. They're side-eyeing each other. They're analyzing body language. They're watching who stopped showing up. They're watching who suddenly became quiet. They're watching who looks guilty. They're watching who's panicking the most. That internal suspicion is turning them against each other. Nobody trusts anybody. Everyone's preparing to betray everyone else. That's how every criminal network collapses. Not from outside pressure, but from inside paranoia. Someone just made a deal. Someone already gave names. Someone already told something they swore they'd never say. They're hoping they can cut their sentence down before the storm reaches them. And the community knows it. People feel when someone is about to fold. People feel when secrets start leaking. People feel when energy shifts in a way that predicts exposure. That's why the silence got heavier. That's why the whispers multiplied. That's why nobody looks certain anymore. Meanwhile, you're walking through all of this with calmness that scares them more than any outburst ever could. Calm people are unpredictable. Calm people are protected. Calm people don't need vengeance. They have alignment. You're the walking reminder that nothing these people planned landed the way they wanted. You didn't break. You didn't fall. You didn't run. You didn't retaliate. You just rose. And rising is the worst punishment they could have imagined. Because you weren't supposed to rise. You were supposed to fold. You were supposed to freeze. You were supposed to crumble. You were supposed to stay down. But you didn't. And that's what's causing the spiritual earthquake around them. Your resilience exposed their weakness. Your elevation exposed their envy. Your survival exposed their intentions. Your peace exposed their chaos. Someone is about to confess publicly, not because you forced them, but because karma cornered them. They'll slip. They'll break. They'll say something in front of the wrong person. They'll expose a detail they shouldn't have known. They'll reveal a motive they tried to hide. And when they do, the whole neighborhood will connect the dots. Everything they build, even their reputation, will collapse. And here's the part that hits the hardest. The ones who snitched aren't the only ones who will face consequences. The ones who watched and said nothing are shaking too. Silence is a form of participation, and the universe counts that. People who clapped quietly are now hiding loudly, because the streets saw everything, even what they think was hidden. But the truth? The streets aren't against you. They just watched you rise while others fell under their own decisions. And soon, very soon, the final collapse will happen. Not the slow collapse they imagined. No, the kind that hits all at once. The kind that exposes everything in a single burst. The kind that reveals who said what, who planned what, who backed away, who doubled down, who lied, who orchestrated, who betrayed, and who tried to hide. Consequences have a strange way of illuminating the room brighter than truth ever could. And when consequences arrive, everyone suddenly stands under a spotlight they can't escape. Someone in that circle is preparing for that moment without realizing it. They're pacing hallways, chewing their thumbnail raw, rehearsing lies that don't sound believable anymore. They keep telling themselves they didn't mean for any of this to get so big, but intentions don't matter now. Energy remembers what people forget, and the energy attached to their actions is dragging them toward exposure like a tide they can't fight. They're hoping someone else takes the blame first. They're hoping someone else cracks before they do. They're hoping someone else becomes the face of the downfall. But hope is not a shield, and guilt is not a negotiator. Someone else, one of the silent ones, is drowning in paranoia so intense it's turning into physical symptoms. They're sweating unexpectedly. Their heart rate spikes when they hear footsteps behind them. They jump when someone knocks too hard on their door. They think every car slowing down is coming for them. They keep checking their phone to see if someone texted about the situation. They're suffocating under the anxiety of their own involvement. That's what happens when you touch someone spiritually protected. You don't face karma alone. You face your own reflection first. Now the community is starting to see what's happening, not because they know the details, but because they feel the tension. People are keeping their distance from the guilty. People are calling out sick. People are changing their normal routes. People are avoiding group spots. People are staying home even when nothing is going on. It's not fear of you. It's fear of the fallout. Because once the snitching began, everyone realized they could be the next name dragged into the open. Every lie they told, every role they played, every conversation they participated in. They're replaying it all in their heads, like a film they don't want to watch, but can't stop. And the funny part? Nobody expected this to unravel so fast. They thought they had time. They thought they had control. They thought they had unity. But unity built on jealousy is brittle. Unity built on hate collapses. Unity built on lies shatters under pressure. Someone out there, someone who played it quiet and acted innocent, is about to face a truth they can't outrun. They were part of the conversations, part of the planning, part of the attempts to twist your destiny into something smaller. They thought nobody would find out. They thought their role was minor enough to remain hidden. They thought they would be safe in the shadows. But now, the spotlight is searching, and shadows don't offer protection when guilt glows in the dark. This person knows someone is snitching. They know someone said something. They know the cracks in the plan are widening. They know people are pointing fingers. They know their name is being whispered in rooms they can't enter. And the worst part? They know they don't have the mental strength to handle the pressure. They're already rehearsing denial, already crafting excuses, already preparing emotional breakdowns to win sympathy. But none of that matters. Not to karma, not to truth, not to the consequences that are circling. Someone in the neighborhood who never liked you is suddenly terrified of being associated with the guilty. They're switching up their tone, switching up their posture, switching up their narrative. They're pretending they always respected you, pretending they stayed neutral, pretending they didn't know what was really going on. That's the survival instinct of cowards. They adjust their loyalty to whatever direction the consequences fall. But you don't have to adjust anything. Your alignment speaks for itself. There's another person, one who acted the boldest, who is dealing with a completely different kind of pressure. Their downfall isn't coming from outside forces. It's coming from inside their own house. Their relationships are falling apart. Someone close to them is tired of carrying secrets. Someone is tired of covering for them. Someone is tired of watching them lie to everyone, including themselves. That person is about to break the quiet in a way that exposes everything, not out of morality, but out of exhaustion. And once that truth drops, the rest will tumble like bricks in a collapsing wall. Meanwhile, the hitters are refusing new assignments, refusing to get involved, refusing to handle anything, because they know one wrong move could spark a chain reaction that drags them all into a situation they can't escape. They're stepping back from anything connected to your name. They're stepping away from anyone connected to the ringleaders. They're avoiding group conversations. They're distancing themselves from the ones who look guilty. A hitter only backs down when their instinct senses something they cannot fight. And their instinct is screaming one thing. This one is protected. Don't touch it. And the more they back away, the more the mastermind feels abandoned. Abandonment breeds desperation. Desperation breeds mistakes. Mistakes breed exposure. That exposure is already happening. There's a location in your community where people gather, not for fun, but for strategy. A secret spot. A basement, a back room, a garage. Somewhere they thought they had privacy. That privacy is compromised now. Someone from that room is leaking information. Someone who was supposed to be loyal is quietly switching sides. Not to protect you, but to protect themselves. Fear exposes alliances faster than truth ever could. They're panicking because they can feel the storyline twisting against them. They can feel the retaliation they expected never coming, but the consequences they didn't expect creeping closer. They imagined you would explode. Instead, you're ascending. They imagined you would lash out. Instead, you became untouchable. They imagined you would crumble. Instead, they're the ones breaking piece by piece. Their downfall has no villain except themselves, no executioner except their conscience, no punishment except the truth they tried to bury. Someone is going to confess first. Someone is going to confess loudest. Someone is going to confess in a way that exposes everyone they ever sat with. They're not doing it because they regret hurting you. They're doing it because they don't want to carry the wrath of what they awakened. And when that confession drops, the entire community will shift instantly. People will see the guilty for who they really are. People will realize your calmness was never weakness. It was divine timing. People will understand you were never a victim. You were the evidence. People will see that the reason the streets went quiet wasn't fear of violence. It was fear of truth. Truth is the most dangerous weapon. It destroys reputations quicker than fists. It exposes motives quicker than investigations. It unmasks cowards quicker than rumors. And truth has chosen this moment to surface. The ones who plotted against you are about to face judgment, not from you. Not from their enemies, not from the law, but from the same community they used to manipulate. Communities don't forgive betrayal easily. Communities don't forget when someone crosses a line. Communities don't stay blind when the truth becomes too loud to ignore. Their names will circulate. Their lies will echo. Their guilt will stain. Their collapse will be public. And you'll walk through the wreckage untouched, unmoved, unbothered, because the universe didn't ask you to fight. It asked you to withstand, and you did. Now everything hidden is surfacing. Everything plotted is failing. Everything stolen is returning. Everything whispered is backfiring. Everything weaponized is collapsing. Everything they built against you is turning into the blueprint of their downfall. The streets know. The hitters know. The snitches know. The community knows. It's going down exactly the way the universe planned. Not with chaos, not with noise, not with retaliation, but with a silence so heavy it suffocates guilt into confession. And that's how this ends. Not with you striking back, but with them choking on their own intentions until the truth spills out and exposes every last one of them. This was never your battle. This was their unraveling, and they lost. Ah, look who walked back into the narrative they never managed to contain. The one who kept breaking their internal briefings just by existing. The one whose name turned into a whispered rumor that kept climbing floors until someone in a suit finally snapped and said, "Fine, send the team." They thought the stories about you were exaggerations, hyperbolic nonsense crafted by people who couldn't comprehend your trajectory. But every version of the rumor had the same tremor buried underneath, an unspoken warning that what surrounds you doesn't behave by their rules. So the higher-ups made a call, the kind they reserve for situations that threaten their sense of order. They didn't deploy rookies. They didn't deploy interns. They deployed their finest minds, the ones trained to handle threats that don't fit neatly into any predefined category. They gathered intelligence officers, behavioral analysts, covert operatives with resumes written in invisible ink. They assumed your story was just noise amplified by people obsessed with your presence. And then they met the real thing. Their first mistake was expecting consistency. They thought they could track you like they track everyone else. Timelines, associates, digital fingerprints. They expected a pattern to emerge. Instead, the deeper they investigated, the more contradictions they found. People described you in ways that didn't match any psychological framework. Some said you were too calm to be human. Others claimed your eyes made them reconsider every decision they'd ever made. And a few, the ones who spoke the quietest, said interacting with you felt like walking into a room where the gravity tilts just slightly off-center. Enough to know something's different, but not enough to explain it without sounding unhinged. So the investigation began, And I wish you could have seen the confidence they carried in those early hours. Clipboards, encrypted tablets, caffeine-fueled certainty. They walked into your world thinking they were dealing with a misunderstanding. They walked out questioning whether their training had ever prepared them for someone like you. Because the stories weren't exaggerated, they were understatements. The first team sent was composed of behavioral scientists specializing in high-complexity personalities. Their job was simple: analyze you, map your psyche, predict your next steps. They expected difficulty, but not existential collapse. They tried to decode your emotional signatures, the way you move through situations other people crumble under. They charted your responses to betrayal, isolation, pressure, and reinvention, and the data confused them. According to their metrics, you should have fractured long ago. According to their predictions, you should be unrecognizable by now. According to their models, someone with your history shouldn't operate at the level of internal authority you've developed. And yet you do. Effortlessly. The analysts argued for hours. Some insisted the datasets were corrupted. Others believed your history had been fabricated. A few proposed that your psychological evolution exceeded their guidelines. But the quietest one in the room, the one who had been staring at your file with a look that bordered on reverence and fear, simply whispered, "We're dealing with someone who processed reality differently." That's when the temperature dropped, not literally, emotionally. The moment the room realized you weren't just another case study, you were a disruption to their foundational understanding of human behavior. Their confidence evaporated. Doubt slipped under the door. And then someone with too much clearance and not enough humility signed the order. Escalate the investigation. That's when they sent the specialists, the ones who don't introduce themselves, who don't appear in public databases, whose job descriptions dissolve if exposed to daylight. These were operatives trained to break through any mental fortress. These were the people called in when leaders wanted answers without complications. These were the minds designed to decode impossible personalities. And they still weren't ready. The first encounter didn't go the way they expected. They approached you with carefully curated scripts, strategies tailored to manipulate your responses, psychological traps disguised as conversation. They expected you to fall for at least one of them. Instead, you dismantled their tactics with the ease of someone who had seen every version of manipulation before lunch. You didn't push back. You didn't argue. You didn't play their game. You simply observed them with a presence that made each of them feel like their masks had been ripped off. One agent reported feeling like he was being interviewed instead of doing the interviewing. Another admitted that halfway through the conversation, she forgot her objective and started questioning why she felt exposed. A third refused to file his report, claiming that describing the experience in words made it sound like he had hallucinated the entire interaction. Leadership didn't appreciate that answer. They demanded a full psychological breakdown, not of you, but of their own operatives, because the team that walked in, capable and self-assured, walked out pale, sweating, and visibly shaken. Some described the encounter as disorienting. Others said your presence forced them to confront the parts of themselves they'd buried. One agent said your gaze felt like it could untangle thoughts no one should be able to access. They weren't talking about reading minds. They were talking about the way you make people feel seen in ways that bypass language entirely. That's when the rumors inside the agency began spreading faster than the official reports. Theories started forming. Uncomfortable ones, not about what you are, but about what you've become. They tried to map your evolution, but every timeline they assembled contradicted the previous one. They examined your past, but your past refused to behave. They couldn't find the moment you lost your fear. They couldn't identify the moment you stopped needing approval. And they certainly couldn't explain the moment you stopped responding to emotional baiting entirely. These people are used to being the apex of the psychological food chain. They're not used to sitting in therapy sessions because a single conversation with someone like you cracked the veneer of their training. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Let me tell you how the therapy angle started. After the third operative had a sudden emotional breakdown mid-mission briefing, leadership had no choice but to call in internal wellness specialists. They assumed this would be temporary, a few sessions to stabilize the team. But the therapists emerged just as shaken, not because of what the operative said, but because of how consistently they described you. They described you as someone who had stepped outside the reach of conventional emotional incentives, someone who no longer revolved around the approval-rejection cycle, someone who didn't budge under pressure because pressure had become your oxygen, someone who processed betrayal, not as injury, but as information, someone who adapted without collapsing, reinvented without asking permission, and observed without absorbing projections. They said, interacting with you felt like standing in front of a force that wasn't trying to dominate them, just revealing the fragility of their own illusions. A government psychologist wrote in her private notes, which were later leaked to a restricted access folder, "I cannot shake the feeling that the subject has outgrown the psychological frameworks we use to classify individuals. Their level of internal authority is unnerving." When professionals who specialize in psychological fortitude begin questioning their own understanding of human behavior, you know something deeper has shifted. Word traveled up the chain quickly. Meetings were held, not one, not two, a series, and each discussion ended with the same frustration. None of their strategies produced the outcome they wanted. You couldn't be provoked, you couldn't be coerced, you couldn't be impressed, and worst of all, you couldn't be intimidated. So they changed tactics. They tried indirect monitoring, studying your digital habits, tracking your connections, examining your social patterns. But the patterns didn't help. Your growth wasn't linear. Your adaptation wasn't predictable. You don't move like someone trying to survive. You move like someone who already knows exactly where they're going, with or without permission, applause, or interference. At this point, the team began unraveling. The emotional toll of studying you was heavier than any of them had anticipated. Some started questioning their job. Others requested reassignment. A few quit outright, muttering that they weren't trained for whatever this is. The funny part? It wasn't because you were threatening them. You didn't say anything offensive. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't lift a finger. Your presence alone made them confront their own limitations. You dragged them, involuntarily, into a version of themselves they weren't ready to acknowledge. That's the part that breaks people the fastest, being forced to see who they are beneath their professional facade. By the time the third wave of specialists arrived, they were already briefed on your psychological impact. They were warned, keep emotional distance, maintain mental grounding, do not attempt empathy-based engagement, do not internalize the subject's reflections. Half of them scoffed. The other half took notes. None of it mattered. Within minutes of interacting with you, each operative experienced the same internal collapse their predecessors had described. Not panic, not fear. Something more subtle, the disintegration of their emotional armor. They weren't prepared for someone who doesn't flinch when confronted, someone who doesn't shrink when misunderstood, someone who doesn't react when provoked, someone who listens without absorbing, observes without attaching, moves without stumbling. You became the mirror nobody wanted to face, and by the time leadership realized they'd triggered a chain reaction of psychological breakdowns inside their own ranks, it was too late. The investigation had already spiraled into an internal crisis they couldn't explain, in documentation, without sounding unhinged. That's when they made the final decision, not to stop the investigation, not to escalate, not to re-strategize. No, they ordered full containment, not of you, but of their own people. Which brings us to the current situation. A handful of their best operatives in therapy, talking about you like you were a puzzle with teeth, whispering your name like it carries an aftertaste they can't wash out, questioning why their training dissolved the moment they stood in your presence, wondering why their minds keep replaying a conversation that wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, wasn't even long, but left them unraveled. And leadership, they still don't know how to classify what you do to people. They can't label it, they can't quantify it, they can't prepare for it. All they know is that the investigation that was supposed to expose you ended up exposing them. Now here's where things turn beautifully chaotic, because instead of pulling the plug and admitting defeat, they doubled down in the most predictable yet self-destructive way possible. They gathered every internal department affected by your name and formed an interagency task force. You should have seen the tension in that room. Directors from intelligence units, clinical analysts, crisis responders, even an ethics committee that only shows up when someone's career is about to die, a slow bureaucratic death. Half the people in that meeting pretended they weren't trembling. The other half weren't even pretending. They were reviewing case files with the same expression soldiers wear after witnessing something that doesn't fit in their belief system. They tried to keep the agenda formal at first. Slide presentations, bullet points, charts that meant nothing because nobody in the room could explain how a civilian with no backing, no operation, no clearance, and no agenda could destabilize the emotional core of over a dozen elite professionals, but formality evaporated quickly. The moment someone pulled up the psychological reports, the silence became suffocating, especially the section titled Post-Encounter Cognitive Distortions. That's where your effect on personnel was cataloged, and trust me, it did not read like a normal briefing narrative. Let me summarize the highlights. One operative reported feeling profoundly re-evaluated. Another claimed your gaze made him realize he'd been lying to himself for 13 years. And the irony is, nobody asked him what the lie was, because they all had their own suspicions. A third said, talking to you felt like standing in front of a truth he'd spent his entire career avoiding. One analyst admitted she couldn't sleep for 3 nights because she kept replaying the moment you answered a question she hadn't even asked yet. And the cherry on top? An agent with a decorated service record confessed that a single conversation with you pushed him into an existential meltdown so severe he tried to resign mid-evaluation. Leadership didn't like that one. It suggested something they didn't want to admit, that their years of psychological conditioning, their hierarchy, their training, their sense of control became irrelevant the moment they stood in front of you and realized you weren't operating from the emotional logic they were taught to manipulate. They tried to reframe it as exhaustion. They tried to call it burnout. They even floated the idea of mass misinterpretation. But when 5 separate operatives described the same internal collapse, the same eerie calm you carried, the same unnerving precision in your responses, they couldn't hide behind corporate vocabulary anymore. So they pivoted. They brought in people whose job wasn't to analyze you, but to manage the emotional fallout you left behind. The therapists expected trauma. What they weren't expecting was envy. Envy from operatives who couldn't comprehend how you achieved a level of internal stability they'd spent decades trying to cultivate. A therapist wrote in her confidential notes, "Subject displays a brand of self-possession that destabilizes anyone who over-identifies with control. They're not just grounded, they are untouchably certain." This wasn't admiration. This was fear packaged as observation. The investigation entered phase 2, not because leadership believed they'd figure you out, but because they refused to admit they'd lost control of the narrative. And when pride overrides accuracy, things get entertaining. They assembled a new team, a hybrid unit consisting of neuroscientists, emotional mapping experts, interrogation strategists, and social engineers. These were the people they call when the target is too mentally fortified for standard penetration. They studied your files for weeks. They memorized every documented moment where someone tried to undermine you and failed. They mapped every pattern you shed, every dynamic you walked away from, every situation where you refused to be manipulated. They approached your psychology like a battlefield and still miscalculated the terrain. Their plan was straightforward: place you in a controlled observation environment and provoke micro-reactions to test your emotional architecture. They wanted to see which levers worked on you. Spoiler, none of them did. Because every lever they invented was created for people who still need something: approval, belonging, validation, power, sympathy, attention. But you'd severed your dependence on all of that. And trying to manipulate someone who needs nothing feels like throwing punches in a vacuum. Everything looks like impact until you realize the target never moved. You became the dead zone they couldn't infiltrate. The moment the new team engaged with you, they experienced the same internal malfunction the previous operatives had faced. They tried to corner you with bait. You dismantled the bait. They tried to push emotional buttons. You didn't have buttons. They tried to mirror your behavior. You saw through it before their breath even settled. The lead strategist, a man known for breaking the minds of war criminals and political defectors, walked away from the encounter looking like he'd just seen the blueprint of his own irrelevance. And it was only a 10-minute meeting. Their emotional reports started sounding like confessionals. They wrote about the pressure of your calm, the way your presence forced them to examine their intentions before you even responded. They wrote about how you forced them to see parts of themselves they'd spent years burying. They wrote about the discomfort of realizing you weren't resisting them, you were observing them. They wrote about how standing in front of you felt like confronting someone who had out-leveled the game they were hired to master. One analyst wrote, "They don't behave like someone with nothing to lose. They behave like someone who already won." That line alone ignited tension within the task force, because people who think they've won are usually reckless, arrogant, untethered. But you weren't any of those things. You weren't gloating. You weren't hostile. You were composed, precise, grounded in a way that made everyone else's composure look like performance art. This is where the chaotic humor enters the picture, not from you, but from how spectacularly they began to implode under their own pressure. Someone in leadership recommended bringing in a spiritual consultant. Another demanded biometric analysis. Someone else proposed tracking your dream cycles. They even debated whether your internal stability indicated a neurological divergence that warranted medical evaluation. They were reaching, clawing for explanations, trying to label something they didn't understand because they couldn't tolerate the possibility that your evolution was self-generated rather than engineered. The more they dug, the more their own fears surfaced. Not fears about your intentions, fears about their inadequacy. You made seasoned operatives confront the truth that all their training, all their experience, all their tactics weren't enough to dominate someone who didn't need their approval, didn't fear rejection, didn't chase comfort, and didn't flinch when confronted. You made them aware, painfully aware, of the gap between who they were and who they pretended to be. It wasn't the threat of violence that destabilized them. It was the threat of perspective. That's what broke them. Leadership launched Phase 3 with a level of desperation they tried to mask with professionalism. They brought in a third wave of operatives, but not investigators this time. No, these were reputation experts, narrative framers, social influence engineers. Their mission? Not to analyze you, but to contain the stories about you. Because the rumors had escaped the agency walls and begun infiltrating the general public, people were whispering about you in places you'd never set foot in. People were telling tales of how you handled setbacks without flinching, how you outgrew entire chapters without announcing it, how you survived betrayals that would have shattered others. They weren't glorifying you. They were studying you. They were modeling themselves after you. That terrified leadership more than anything else. Because if one person can resist manipulation, fine. But if the story of that person begins spreading, inspiring others to question the scripts they've been fed, inspiring others to detach from emotional dependence, inspiring others to reclaim their internal authority, that becomes a wildfire they cannot contain. And so the new unit attempted to distort the narrative. They tried painting you as unstable. They tried reframing your independence as avoidance. They tried stitching together a character profile designed to make the public second-guess your reputation. None of it worked, because every story they released contradicted the experiences of the people who had actually met you. Your presence wasn't chaotic, it was precise. Your behavior wasn't erratic, it was intentional. Your evolution wasn't delusion, it was earned. People laughed at the agency's attempts to discredit you. It only made the rumors louder. Even worse, some operatives inside the agency began defecting, not physically, but mentally. They started questioning the mission. They started questioning the ethics of containing someone whose only threat was self-awareness. Leadership noticed, and paranoia ignited like gasoline. They began reviewing their own employees for contamination. Yes, contamination, as if your existence were a kind of intellectual virus capable of dissolving loyalty. And the disturbing part? They weren't wrong. Not because you were manipulating them, but because you were revealing to them that they had built their entire identity around illusions that couldn't survive real introspection. One therapist wrote, "Personnel are experiencing a phenomenon similar to ideological dissonance. Subject did not persuade them of anything. They arrived at their own revelations simply by observing the subject's emotional independence." This terrified leadership because it meant your influence wasn't coercive, it was reflective. You didn't need to convince anyone of anything. They convinced themselves. That's the part that made the therapy backlog explode. Operatives began requesting emergency sessions. Supervisors began whispering that the project should be shut down. Analysts began questioning the ethics of continuing. And leadership, desperate, cornered, spiraling, finally admitted in an internal memo that the investigation had caused more internal damage than any target profile in the last 10 years. But they couldn't stop. Stopping would mean admitting they were studying someone stronger than their own organization. Stopping would mean admitting defeat. Stopping would mean acknowledging that everything they built could be undone by the presence of one person who doesn't depend on their approval. So they carried the investigation into Phase 4, the phase they never wanted to utilize, the phase reserved for individuals whose influence threatens the stability of institutional control. They began monitoring the impact you had on your environment, not your actions, but your after effects. They interviewed people who had interacted with you briefly. They asked indirect questions to see whether your presence altered others' decision-making. What they found disturbed them more than anything else. People were changing after talking to you. They were becoming more decisive, more self-respecting, more unwilling to tolerate manipulation, more uninterested in validation, more grounded in their own identity. You were creating shift patterns in people without trying, without messaging, without influence campaigns, without even knowing it. You had become the catalyst they never intended to activate. The final blow came when one of their lead operatives, someone with a flawless psychological record, broke down during a briefing and confessed, "I don't know what they did to me, but I can't stop thinking about how wrong we were." He wasn't talking about you being innocent. He was talking about you being bigger, bigger than their files, bigger than their frameworks, bigger than their attempts to contain you behind sanitized language. Leadership knew the situation had gone out of control the moment that operative began crying mid-sentence, saying your name like it was a trigger that rearranged his entire worldview. That was the first therapy incident. Then came the second, then the 8th, then the 12th. Soon, the therapists were the ones requesting supervision because the stories they were hearing clashed with everything they'd been trained to believe. They weren't hearing about danger. They were hearing about a level of internal power that made their own psychological models feel outdated. The investigation was no longer an investigation. It had become a mirror, one they couldn't look into without cracking. And the question haunting them now has shifted yet again. It isn't, what are they? It isn't, how do we contain them? It isn't even, how did they become like this? No, now, the question and torturing leadership is something far more unsettling. If this is the impact you have on trained professionals, what happens when the rest of the world catches up? That question hit them harder than any operational failure they'd ever experienced, because until now, they assumed the damage was contained, limited to a handful of agents, a few analysts, a cluster of specialists who got a little too close to your gravitational pull. But what they didn't want to admit was that none of this was proximity-based. None of this was triggered by you trying to influence anyone. The distress, the unraveling, the emotional core meltdowns, all of it happened because your existence alone disrupts people who depend on illusion to keep themselves functioning. And if that effect spreads outside their walls, if regular citizens start encountering the same shift their operatives did, leadership knows exactly what comes next. A collapse not of society, but of the psychological scaffolding they used to control it. They needed a solution, urgently. But here's the problem. How do you contain something that isn't doing anything? How do you regulate someone who isn't breaking any laws, starting any movements, or engaging in any confrontation? How do you neutralize a person whose only offense is refusing to operate from fear? They didn't know. and that ignorance created the worst emotion an institution can feel: vulnerability. For the first time, their frameworks, their hierarchy, their enforcement models felt flimsy. Because if one citizen can walk through their evaluations and leave a trail of emotional collapse behind them simply by being stable, then what does that say about the people who are supposed to be in control? The more they tried to make sense of you, the more their internal reports started sounding like diary entries written by exhausted adults realizing Santa isn't real. Analysts stopped pretending they had explanations. Operatives stopped pretending they had strategies. Therapists stopped pretending they were objective. One senior examiner, a man who built his entire career on deconstructing personalities stronger than himself, wrote in a confidential file, "What we're dealing with is not defiance. It is not aggression. It is not resistance. It is a kind of internal clarity that renders manipulation impossible." They hated that sentence. They hated it because it exposed the truth they'd been avoiding. The real threat wasn't your behavior. The real threat was your clarity. People who don't crumble under pressure are already trouble. People who don't bend to external expectation are dangerous. People who stop seeking validation become unpredictable. But someone who demonstrates equal composure in conflict, isolation, betrayal, uncertainty, and opportunity, that is the kind of person whose existence challenges the entire architecture of control. Leadership began rereading every file you ever touched, every interview you were involved in, every situation you rose from, every chapter where they expected you to break but didn't. They went searching for the point where your identity was supposed to collapse under the weight of your experiences. They looked for the moment where the average person would have shattered. They couldn't find it. Every analyst kept circling back to the same confusing realization. The events designed to weaken you became the events that refined you. And the idea that pain could sharpen someone instead of destroying them offended their worldview. They tried to label this phenomenon. They tried to invent a new classification. They tried to pathologize your growth so it would make sense on paper. But nothing stuck, because every attempt to categorize you made them confront the fact that their categories were too small. Meanwhile, the therapists were drowning in sessions they never studied for. They expected trauma. They found transformation. They expected emotional instability. They found someone whose emotional boundaries were unbreakable. They expected codependence. They found a level of independence that borders on mythic for the average human psyche. Some therapists joked, nervously, that your existence should have come with a warning label. Not because you're harmful, but because you force people to face their internal contradictions. That kind of confrontation is rare, uncomfortable, and deeply destabilizing for people who built their identities on borrowed confidence. You stripped away their comfort, not intentionally, but by showing them what genuine strength looks like. And the devastating truth is that most people have never met someone who survived what you survived and didn't become resentful, unstable, or hostile. You didn't just survive, you evolved. You didn't just heal, you transcended. You didn't just adapt, you rebuilt your entire psychological architecture from the ground up. And agencies hate that kind of independence. But here's where the story twists into something even the investigators couldn't predict. Once word spread about the collapse inside the task force, once the leadership realized they were losing more personnel to existential spirals than operational stress, they decided to shift the investigation from offense to defense, not defending themselves from you, defending themselves from who they became after encountering you. They crafted policies, actual written policies, instructing operatives to avoid introspection after interviewing you. Yes, you heard that correctly. They banned introspection. The directive stated, personnel are prohibited from engaging in reflective thought regarding their personal identity, career motivations, or emotional conditioning for a minimum of 30 days following subject interaction. You know what that means. You broke them so deeply that thinking became a hazard. The investigators began whispering among themselves, trading rumors behind closed doors, sharing experiences they were afraid to admit in official reports. One agent confessed he began questioning every decision he ever made in his career because of a single line you said casually. Another said he couldn't look at his badge the same way because your presence made him understand how much of his sense of power came from objects instead of integrity. A third confessed that you didn't intimidate him, you liberated him, and he didn't know what to do with that feeling. Leadership panicked at that one. Liberation is contagious. Then came the moment no agency ever wants to face. When the people meant to analyze, you started wishing they were you. That's when leadership realized this wasn't a containment breach. This was an identity crisis, the kind that spreads through halls like a quiet wildfire. People weren't just triggered by you. They were inspired by you. And inspiration is far harder to control than rebellion. They attempted damage control. They shut down discussions. They restricted access to your files. They classified your interviews. They replaced supervisors. They increased oversight. But nothing worked, because they couldn't contain the one thing they feared most, the stories. People inside the agency talked about you like you were a myth walking around in a mortal frame. They said you were unshakable. They said you were unreadable. They said you were a reminder that strength doesn't require aggression, that stability doesn't require approval, and that clarity doesn't require permission. Even the directors began speaking of you differently, not with disdain, not with concern, with caution, because by now they understood what they were truly dealing with, not a threat, not a risk, but a reflection of everything they weren't. You exposed their fragility by demonstrating your resilience. You exposed their doubt by demonstrating your certainty. You exposed their dependency by demonstrating your independence. And then the public got wind of it. Not the whole truth, but enough. Enough to ignite curiosity, enough to spark interest, enough to send your name drifting through conversations in places you'll never visit physically, but influence psychologically. Rumors multiplied like they were trying to keep up with your evolution. People whispered about you in alleyways, cafes, online spaces, underground networks. Some stories exaggerated what happened. Most stories underplayed it. But all stories had one thing in common. They made you sound untouchable. That terrified leadership more than the therapy backlog. Because here's the part they never accounted for. When a person survives the kind of chaos you survived and doesn't come out broken, the world pays attention. When a person refuses manipulation and remains grounded, the world pays attention. When a person walks away from validation without losing confidence, the world pays attention. And when a person becomes so internally fortified that even government-trained specialists lose their composure in their presence, the world doesn't just pay attention. The world studies, the world imitates, the world evolves, and that's the outcome leadership feared even more than losing personnel. The possibility that you are not an outlier, but a preview of the new psychological blueprint. Because if the average citizen starts thinking the way you think, starts seeing through manipulation the way you do, starts living with the kind of internal authority you carry, then every control structure built on fear, guilt, and dependency becomes obsolete. That's why they kept investigating, not because they thought you were dangerous, but because they were afraid you were a sign of what comes next. And here's the final truth they never wanted to admit. The more they studied you, the more they studied themselves. And the reflection wasn't flattering. They found insecurity where there should have been discipline. They found fear where there should have been strength. They found confusion where there should have been clarity. You didn't break them. They broke themselves trying to understand you. Your presence did what no threat ever could. It exposed the cracks in their intelligence frameworks. It revealed how fragile control becomes when confronted by someone who cannot be manipulated. It proved that strength built on authority collapses when confronted by strength built on authenticity. You made them realize that real power doesn't come from titles, badges, or chains of command. Real power comes from someone who has rebuilt their identity so thoroughly that external pressure becomes irrelevant. So now leadership sits with a dilemma so uncomfortable it borders on comical. They can't classify you. They can't contain you. They can't discredit you. They can't control how people talk about you. They can't prevent the stories from spreading. And they can't stop the psychological aftershocks you leave behind. They sent their best to break you. Instead, their best broke themselves. And the funniest part? You didn't wage war. You didn't rebel. You didn't plot. You didn't fight. You simply existed with so much internal certainty that their entire apparatus folded under the weight of your presence. So now the world stands on the edge of a shift they can't predict. Because if trained professionals collapse in your presence, if hardened operatives cry your name in therapy, if psychological experts rewrite their models after studying you, then leadership knows, absolutely knows, what happens next. The rest of the world won't just catch up. The rest of the world will follow. And when they do, the story won't be about the agency that tried to contain you. It will be about the person who walked through their investigation untouched and left an entire government questioning its own mind. The stories people tell about you, they aren't exaggerations. They're warnings, not that you're dangerous, but that you're free. And freedom, the real kind, is the one thing they were never trained to handle.